There was once a time where, to some people, gaming and dating might have been considered mutually exclusive things. Thankfully, the inaccurate stigma of gamers all being a bunch of losers who can't get dates to save their lives has largely been lifted over the years. And as it should be. It's cool to be a nerd these days, let alone a gamer, so needless to say, there's plenty of fish in the sea out there for those with similar interests. Now with that said, the concept of dating has been around for ages, and like most other activities in life, it's no surprise that it would eventually find its way into video games as well, through one form or another. There is an entire genre completely focused on this. However, as the title suggests, this video is going to be about 8 great JRPGs that have dating sim elements, with some of them being more prevalent than others. With Valentine's Day only just a week away now, we figured if there was any appropriate time to make this video, this was it. So go ahead and bust out the chocolate or candy hearts, turn on some cheery, upbeat J-pop music, and let's date some waifus and dive into this list. First up, we have Thousand Arms. It only seemed right to start this list off with the oldest JRPG dating sim hybrid to be released in the West. Thousand Arms is a really charming, unique game with a wacky cast of anime trope-inspired characters and a lot of cool locations. Being what the game calls a spirit blacksmith, you go on dates with various girls to strengthen your weapon and gain access to different magic and skills. The dates basically just come down to responding to various topics in conversation to level up your relationship, choosing the appropriate answer based on whatever particular girl you're dating at the time. You can also give some gifts to raise affection as well as play some mini games, but dating is the main way to do so. If the date goes well enough, you can even get a kiss at the end. When I first played this game when I was like 10 years old, I remember trying to show this part off to some of my friends even. Puberty was a wild time. Anyway, while the encounter rate can be kind of annoying at times, and the turn-based battle system could have been improved if they allowed you to directly control more than one character at once, Thousand Arms is still an enjoyable enough experience with a pleasant, lighthearted atmosphere. It was only ever released for the original PlayStation and is a bit of a hidden gem actually, but if you're able to get your hands on it, then I do think it is worth going back to play if you're into this sort of thing. It's just a little rougher around the edges in some aspects compared to some other games on this list. Next up, we have Tokyo Xanadu EX+. Tokyo Xanadu was developed by Nihon Falcom, which is the same developers behind the famed E-Series and the Legend of Heroes series. While both of those series have existed in Japan since the 80s, they didn't really start to catch on in the West until like the last 5 or so years really. Not to say they weren't around in the West before then, they just went pretty under the radar for the most part, even to JRPG fans. The same could be said about Tokyo Xanadu, and even still, the game remains relatively obscure. It can be easy to write this game off as just a budget Persona knockoff on first glance, but the game is much more than that and is different in some pretty crucial aspects. The combat is entirely action-based and has you swapping characters throughout dungeons to account for enemies' weaknesses. It's a pretty fluid system and the controls feel good. In order to improve some of your character's skills in combat, you have to hang out with them in special bonding events outside of battle. These are pretty similar to social links in the Persona games, and the bonding events in the Trails of Cold Steel games. Honestly, Tokyo Xanadu does kind of feel like a mashup between both of those series, sprinkled in with a little bit of East as well. The exploration and setting is similar to Persona, the dialogue and overall aesthetic of the game is similar to Cold Steel, and the combat has some similarities to the East series. If you like any or all of those series, then this is definitely one that you want to check out. Next on our list, we have Fire Emblem Three Houses. Some of the previous Fire Emblem games could fit here as well, but I'm going to focus on Three Houses being the most recent release. Three Houses is the latest entry in Nintendo's famous, long-running strategy RPG franchise that was first made popular in the West after some of its characters appeared on Super Smash Bros. Melee. The series existed in Japan long before that though, and got its start on the original Famicom all the way back in 1990. Aesthetically, the series has changed quite a lot over the years, but the core of the gameplay remains very similar with the tactical RPG gameplay and the weapon triangle system. The dating sim elements in Three Houses are fairly light for the most part and basically just involve going on tea dates with your party members that has you answering questions to improve affection and your synergy in battle. You can choose to pursue a romantic relationship with one of the characters though, that gives you some slightly different cutscenes, and even affects the ending a little bit. I wouldn't really say the whole dating sim aspect is a huge component in this game, but it is there in small doses for people who like this sort of thing. Even besides that though, Three Houses is still a real quality game that any fan of strategy RPGs should definitely play. Alright, next up we have Shining Resonance Reframe. Even though Shining Resonance is a descendant of the legendary Shining Force series, it's definitely more similar to that of a modern Tales game more than anything these days. Instead of the tactical, grid-based gameplay from Shining Force, Shining Resonance opts for a more action-based battle system built around a 4-person party that has you only controlling one character at once. It's actually really fun and probably the best thing about this game, alongside the music. The story isn't really anything to write home about, however, and the lack of variety in the environments is a little disappointing, just being honest. While I did compare this game to the Tales series not too long ago, I do think it's a significant notch below it as well. It's not a bad game by any means, but just know that I'm not giving it the highest accolades here, and is one of the weaker entries on this list. The reason it is on this list though is because of the dating elements present in it that allows you the option to date both male and female party members. Inclusion is important, so that was pretty cool of them to add the option for both. This doesn't really add any improvements to the gameplay though, and is more just for cutscenes, story, and dialogue reasons. If you like anime or dating sims, or maybe are just looking for a fun action RPG to hold you over until Tales of Arise comes out later this year, then this may be one worth looking into. Next up, we have The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel. I already mentioned this game/series earlier in the video, so I'm sure some of you were expecting it to pop up at some point. The Legend of Heroes series is over 30 years old at this point, and starting with Trails in the Sky from 2004, every game since then has been connected in story. It's basically like the Marvel Cinematic Universe for JRPGs. It's quite impressive, really. Trails of Cold Steel is the third saga in this ongoing plot, and while you won't be able to fully appreciate every little detail or callback reference like others who have played the previous two sagas will be able to do, it's still not a bad starting point for the series. The first Trails of Cold Steel game has a completely new cast of playable characters and doesn't really require any knowledge of the previous game's story. Now, the third and fourth Cold Steel games on the other hand, I would definitely recommend going back to play the previous games before those, as the plots intermingle a lot more. But luckily, you have some time to decide that for yourself after playing the first couple Cold Steel games. Cold Steel is really big on character development and interaction, with the bonding events serving as nice ways to get to know your party members and develop relationships with them. Based on who you choose to spend time with, along with some other criteria, you can pursue a romantic interest that changes some cutscenes near the end of the game and allows for different trophies. With that said though, regardless of who you choose, there is a canonical love interest that the game kinda tries to force on you and is really prevalent in the later entries. As you can probably tell, the world building in this series is second to none, and combine this with the really fun strategic turn-based battle system and the incredible music, and you have quite the gem here. Overall, this is a game and series that comes highly recommended. If you haven't played them yet, check it out. The next game we have on our list is Sakura Wars. We covered this game not too long ago in our best JRPGs of 2020 video, and it just so happens that it's very fitting for this list as well. Sakura Wars basically plays out like a harem anime that takes place in a fictionalized version of 1940s Tokyo that has you fighting in giant mechs. Yeah, I know that's a pretty bizarre premise to some, but I also know there are others out there who are thinking this sounds like some cool ass shit. The battle system plays out like a fast-paced action RPG, but really the bulk of this game lies in the dating simulation aspect. You can go out on dates with every member of your all-female party, which plays into the gameplay pretty significantly as it allows your party members to get stronger and gain access to new skills and stuff like that. The gameplay does take a backseat to this dating simulation component, so if you're not the biggest fan of text-heavy games, then this may not be one for you. If you're cool with doing a lot of watching and reading though, and the concept of playing an interactive anime in game form sounds appealing to you, then this is definitely one worth playing. Most of the series hasn't been localized in the West, but there was an older entry which did make it stateside for the PS2 and the Wii. It's much harder to track down and much more expensive though, so you're better off just playing this most recent release, which is a more polished game in pretty much every aspect. Coming up next, we have Stardew Valley. First of all, I know this isn't a true JRPG as it's more of a farming simulation with some light RPG elements, but even still, the dating sim aspect is pretty fleshed out, so I thought it was worth mentioning here for that reason. Starlight Valley is a really pleasant, relaxing game that has you tending to a farm through various tasks, fighting monsters, and building relationships with those around you in town. The battle system plays out pretty similar to an old school action RPG, but it's pretty basic and not the main focus here. Like I briefly mentioned earlier, in addition to the farming simulation, the dating sim component plays a pretty big role here. You can build friendships with all the people in town by completing quests for them, giving them items, and just talking to them daily. If your relationship grows strong enough, you can even marry the special person. Just one at a time though. Each character has a distinguishable personality, so much like in real life, you can choose to connect with whoever you best mesh with. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't played this game a whole lot, so I can't comment too much about it, but when talking to fans of it online, they always seem to point out the social aspect is one of the more notable parts about it. If you're looking for a really laid-back experience without all the stress of fast-paced action and high intensity like in a lot of other video games, then this is probably one you want to look into. To finish off this list, we have Persona 3, 4, and 5. Of course, we couldn't make a video about JRPGs with dating elements without including the series that popularized this hybrid genre in the West. While the first two Persona games are still great, especially the second one, it wasn't until the third game that the series would start the traditional format it would expand upon and be known for today. Most of you are probably already pretty familiar with the Persona games, so I'll keep this fairly brief. All three of these games take place in modern Tokyo and have you balancing school life with your social links and battling/fusing demons, otherwise known as Persona. Through social links and the overall dialogue, these games do a fantastic job at really making you feel like you're building connections and becoming friends with those around you. You can date various girls in these games, but for important holidays and stuff like that, you do have to pick one or risk facing the wrath of a bunch of angry waifus. Tonally, Persona 3 is a bit more edgy and gothic. Persona 4 is more lighthearted, even though it is centered around a murder mystery in a small countryside town in Japan. And the fifth game focuses on standing up to those abusing power and making them pay for their crimes. They're all incredible games, but if you haven't played any of them yet and are looking to start somewhere, I would probably recommend the fifth one as it is the easiest to get into these days with the smoothest battle system by far and much more interactive, innovative dungeon design. With that said, Persona 4 is my favorite in the series as I thought it had a slightly stronger story and felt more connected to its characters. I did play it when graduating college though, so there may be some subconscious bias with making metaphorical connections with saying goodbye to that group of characters to my present situation at that time. Even still, with the extremely addicting gameplay, the strong character development, and the absolutely amazing music, these are not only some of the best games of this type of genre, but some of the best JRPGs ever. And with that wraps up this list of 8 great JRPGs with dating sim elements. As always, if you enjoyed the video, it would mean a lot if you could either like it or leave a comment. I'm sure there are some other great JRPG dating sim hybrids that we didn't cover, so let us know. And please hit that subscribe button if you want to keep seeing videos like this. If you want to take your support a step further, links to our Patreon are in the bio below. At the end of the day, we're just happy to have you here watching though. So with that said, thank you for watching and hope you have an awesome day everyone. This is Gaming Productions. Until next time.